Introduce my friend, Paul Fine, who is our speaker for tonight. Almost everybody here knows and loves Paul. He's been here at the University of Michigan for a long time. He started out in college at the Michigan of the East, sometimes called Harvard. Came here in 1986 as a medical student and has been here ever since. Since the moment he got here, he started winning awards for his humanistic care of patients, for his teaching of medical students, and it's really too much to go through. I do want to highlight one prize that he got, which was the Galen Silver Shovel Award. It is the preeminent medical student award for attendings, for doctors. And it's given to the doc who is considered the best teacher. Galen's is a society that's been going since, I think, 1914. Paul is the only one to have won this twice. And so it is not insignificant. I don't think Galen could have won it twice himself. Paul, on top of that, has been part of the doctoring faculty that teaches students how to be good doctors, how to be doctors who listen. He's a musician. He composes and plays music. I think you sing. Do you sing?
Terribly.
I met Paul first when I was an intern. I came in 1993, and he was a chief medical resident, but he was on my service as my attending. And I had heard all things about Paul. This is the greatest doctor. You're going to love working with him. And he comes in on the first day of rounds, and he was going to do attending rounds. And he says, "I'm going to read you this article from Sports Illustrated." And I thought, he's not prepared. And he just got his Sports Illustrated monthly journal. But that wasn't it at all. Paul had a different idea about what he wanted to teach us that day, right? You're not going to learn about cardiology or pulmonary from Sports Illustrated. But the article he brought up was about Jim Valvano. In 1993, he was the storied coach at North Carolina State University. And he had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And the whole article was about his struggle with cancer, how he fought it, how he struggled through the system getting chemotherapy, descriptions of what it was like to get chemo, descriptions of his interactions with people within the healthcare system. And it was powerful. It was powerful, and I think Paul knew this, and it set the stage for us. He wanted us, of course, to make sure to take good care of the patients, but he knew that we would try and do that for him. What he was trying to show us was that these patients with their illnesses had bigger stories in their lives. Maybe they weren't football coaches, maybe they weren't whatever famous person you can think of, but they had their stories that brought them there. They had their support systems that made them stronger, that helped them get through this. And from that time on, at least for that month, it really had an impact on me. And Paul did that without lecturing, just sitting down and reading us an article. I consider Paul my friend, and I think many of us here give him the ultimate congratulations, which is he's our doctor too. I am very pleased and proud to introduce Paul Fine as the speaker tonight.
I don't really have anything to say. I just wanted to hear Sandro's introduction. I still have that article in a file cabinet.
You brought it. You'll read it now.
Yes. It's online. We'll find it. Let me start with a poem in advance of the speech, and something I don't get to do when I teach. I just want to say, before starting to bore you, how grateful I am to be standing before you. And to add that I'm sorry that you don't have a choice and will have to put up with my hoarseness of voice. This evening's important. It helps reinforce some essential ideas that we choose to endorse. And it gives us a chance to acknowledge and share humanistic approaches to medical care. I will give you more meter and rhyme as I close, but for now, it is best to continue in prose. Thank you again for inviting me to address the question of how to preserve humanism in modern medicine. My task is even more difficult because I cannot rely on the usual techniques we attendings employ to avoid answering such hard questions. Technique number one, turn the question around on the person who dared to ask it. I could answer that for you, but you'll remember it better if you look it up yourself. Please give us a 5-minute presentation tomorrow. Number two, shake your head ruefully and say, it's mired in controversy. I mean, after all, what isn't controversial these days? You can't get more than 8 out of 10 nephrologists to agree that serum creatinine has something to do with renal function. And number three, look at your watch and say regretfully, I don't have time to go into the details now, but let's just say it involves cytokines. And so I must come before you stripped of any pretense to authoritative wisdom. I can offer only observations born of long experience. In our profession, we hear a lot about evidence-based medicine, a concept so important that it has its own catchy shorthand, EBM. As you know, EBM seeks to use research studies of high quality to quantify the benefits and harms of various diagnostic and therapeutic interventions. I am, of course, a proponent of EBM. I'm an academic internist. Our food pyramid includes 5 servings of EBM every day. But let me risk excommunication by reminding you that it has its limitations. It is easy to forget that EBM, strictly speaking, only determines the correct recommendation for a population, specifically a group of people who are sufficiently similar to those who participated in the study. But doctors don't treat populations as a rule, we treat individual patients. And EBM can't serve as the sole basis for making a recommendation to an individual patient. We need to add something just as important, something that I like to call relationship-based medicine, a crucial part of our profession long before EBM was a possibility. You see, the science only takes us so far. The eventual plan, of course, will be determined by doctors and patients together, and that requires a relationship, through which doctors learn about their patients' values, priorities, and constraints. And I'm sure you can easily see a fundamental difference emerging. Evidence-based medicine is built on the ways in which patients are similar to one another, specifically to the patients who participated in research studies. Whereas relationship-based medicine requires the discovery of how patients are different from others, identifying the qualities that make them unique individuals. There's another important difference, one that is especially meaningful to medical students. Though it takes a long time to be fully capable of practicing evidence-based medicine, even inexperienced students, whose clinical knowledge is very much a work in progress, can demonstrate the empathy, respect, and genuine interest that constitute the core of relationship-based medicine. This should be quite a morale boost, especially since it is often these traits that patients single out and appreciate the most. Obviously, our patients desire and deserve clinical proficiency from any physician with whom they interact. But trust me, they remember the person who sits down and takes time with them, shows a sincere concern, treats them with kindness, makes eye contact, and patiently explains things in terms that they can understand. For the most part, they enjoy seeing the doctor or the medical student as a person with whom they can make a connection, valuing warmth and personality over sterile expertise. What about the clinicians? We benefit too. The personal connection makes what we do more enjoyable and rewarding. I'm a primary care doctor and an inpatient attending on general medicine. I also happen to be a proud idealist. Whenever it feels as if my idealism is being threatened by some of the more frustrating aspects of the job, I turn my attention to the wonderful relationships that I have with my patients. The fact that after so many years, it really does feel as if old friends are coming by to visit. Sure, we have diabetes to manage and aches and pains to sort out, screening colonoscopies to order. But when I look at the patient list on any given day, I can happily anticipate conversations, even if brief, about vacations, children and grandchildren, concerts, college football, you name it. We have inside jokes. Sometimes we have tearful goodbyes. Many of my patients won't tell me how they're doing until they first asked about me and my family. I have a few who don't want to do anything that a new doctor tells them until they first had a chance to run it past me, a doctor they already know and trust. Yes, I said at 9 p.m., I think you should permit the emergency department doctor to place an NG tube for your complete bowel obstruction. That's amusing, but doesn't it also say something awfully nice about relationship-based medicine? We clinicians also get something subtle, something that can be elusive. Assurance at the time that we really are making a difference. That's not always true with evidence-based medicine. Here's a primary care example. Statin and cholesterol-lowering medicines and optimal glucose control have both been shown to reduce adverse events in large groups of people with diabetes. It's straightforward EVM. But it's not an individual guarantee either way. One patient may have these interventions and still have a bad outcome. Another might do well without them. So with EVM, sometimes all doctors can know is that they've helped to make a favorable outcome more likely, not that a given patient has definitely benefited. That's too bad. Wouldn't it be uplifting to get the following phone call one day from a patient? Hi doc, just want to let you know, today is the day I would have had a heart attack had you not given me Lipitor and the fantastic control of my sugars. Thanks a bunch. Sadly, that call does not come. But with relationship-based medicine, one can usually count on positive feedback, often immediately. Most of us can tell quickly if an interpersonal encounter is going well, if a patient seems to be getting more comfortable and engaged. Or picture a medical team caring for a hospitalized patient. We might spend 20 minutes in a conference room dissecting that patient's complicated acid-base disorder. We then go together to see that man who feels cold and sick and has trouble talking because his mouth is so dry. At that moment, he clearly cares less about our brilliant explication of his physiology than he does about his discomfort. Shouldn't we, the medical team, take a moment and get him an extra blanket and a cup of water? Sure, he could ring for the nurse, but we're there. We can get to it immediately. And importantly, it will be more meaningful if we do it. He'll appreciate the gesture, and we will get to know at that moment that we made a difference, small though it seems. And we can do this without having to sacrifice the undeniable pleasure of calculating the anion gap and employing Winter's formula. Now, let's be realistic. Optimal relationship-based medicine takes time, which is hard to come by, but it's worth it. Here's one more reason. It reminds us that we should try to see things from the perspective of patients and families. Here's what I mean. We doctors have the privilege of having one of the few jobs for which an average day can be a once-in-a-lifetime experience for someone else. Let's start with a non-medical example. Consider the cast of a Broadway musical. While you are counting down the minutes to an experience you've been looking forward to for months, they are hurrying to get the grocery shopping done and get down to work, where they recite the same lines and sing the same songs several times every week. But they still need to make that night's performance transcendent and unforgettable for you, even though they will likely have no memory of it at all. Here's a clinical example of the same sort of thing. When my daughter Ellie was hospitalized in 2011, she had a particularly difficult day that was made much better by the kind attentions of a wonderful nurse. I remember taking that nurse aside at the end of her shift and thanking her for everything that she had done. I said, I bet if somebody asked you today how your day was, you'd say the usual, nothing special, just routine. but it wasn't routine for us. And we will never forget your professionalism and kindness. And we do remember, gratefully, all these years later. I'm sure many of you have similar memories of medical care provided to you or your family members. And unfortunately, some of you may have seen healthcare professionals who just seem to be going through the motions. In medicine, we have the privilege and often daunting responsibility of working with patients and families during transformative moments of their lives, moments that are often among the most stressful and consequential they will ever have. However routine these days may seem to us, we must recognize that they are exceptional for those we care for, and we owe it to them to do it the right way each time. I've used the term patient several times so far, but I might add that I like that word more as a description of a role than as a way to identify an actual person. I actually try never to refer to anybody as the patient, as in the patient reports knee pain. I prefer names and pronouns. Word choice makes a difference, even though it seems subtle, and I believe we all benefit from frequent reminders that we're talking about people, not just aggregations of data that we get to analyze. But we also need to remember that doctors, like patients, are people, first and foremost, and that's okay. In fact, sometimes that's all a patient really needs. I encounter many situations, especially when patients tell me about burdensome stresses in their lives or the loss of loved ones, that seem to call for me to respond the way any kind person would respond to another person's distress, in a manner that is more personal and less clinical, more Paul and less Dr. Fine. Humanistic medical care is fundamentally about one human's caring response to another. We don't even need a medical degree or a white coat to accomplish that. In my view, that white coat represents just the right blend of relationship-based and evidence-based medicine, even though the tag at the back of mine insists that it's 80% polyester and 20% cotton. And despite my well-known passion for all things purple, I am glad that it's white. Here's one reason. We live in an era of disease advocacy, with many conditions now symbolized by ribbons of a certain color, each designed to heighten public awareness and to foster a supportive community for those affected. There's pink for breast cancer, red for heart disease, purple for pancreatic cancer, etc. One site I found listed 502 different examples. Might someone feel overlooked because there's no way to acquire and display all 502? But I look at it like this. White light refracts into all of these colors. We can think of the unadorned whiteness of the coat as having within it the entire spectrum of ribbon colors, a rainbow of compassion and concern for those with any health issue. All of this sounds pretty idealistic, I know. But this is a day for idealism. In fact, this is a profession for idealism. Medical students often come in full of such notions, only to have them eroded somewhat by the demands and the culture of clinical medicine. Let me encourage you to try to fight against that. Imbue your sense of purpose with some elasticity, so it won't be displaced too long by the stress that this work inevitably produces. Idealism isn't naivete or a denial that these professional stresses exist. On the contrary, I have found that it helps me, on those hard days, to remember why I chose a career in medicine and what I hoped to accomplish when I first put on a white coat as a medical student 37 years ago. When I take off that coat for the last time, I know it will be the relationships that I miss the most. If you'll indulge me, I would like to close by sharing with you the lyrics of a song that I wrote back in 2008, just because I believe they echo well the guiding principles of this wonderful organization. The song is called the Hippocratic Ode, and it's an intentionally hokey look at what an idealistic doctor might say to a prospective patient. Why just the lyrics? Well, I could say that it's because I don't have a piano here. Or I could say that the answer is mired in controversy that involves cytokines. But the real reason is that exposing you to my singing voice, especially tonight, would violate first do no harm. We live these days in a skeptical age, captured and kept in a cynical cage, harried and hurried, wary and worried. We need a reprieve. We need to believe. I located a door, a release from that cage. In the book of my outlook, I turned a new page. I made it my mission to be a physician, and I have a proposal to offer to you, a lyrical statement of what I will do. I'll be your doctor. If you're realistic in what you expect, I'll try every visit to earn your respect. I'll take time to know you and make it my plan to listen with kindness and do what I can. Yes, I'll be your doctor. I can't offer miracles, tests on demand, or assurance that all will be just as you planned. I pledge to you merely my effort sincerely, to value whatever's important to you, to have the right motives in all that I do. I'll be your doctor. I can't promise a cure, but I promise to care. When you're looking back, you will know I was there. I'm still just a person, but one who will try, one who can smile, and one who can cry. Yes, I'll be your doctor. Thank you.
We have this token of our appreciation here. And thank you so much. And you can't hang up your coat on the ring. You gotta keep the coat on. For all our benefits. Sarah is gonna come up and we're gonna start the